I'm going to show you how to draw with your pen tool, your pastel tool, and show you all the parameters you'll need to make this very tool with OpenSCAD for your CNC. Let me show you a little trick that you may want to do. If you look at the pastels, it's a little bit speckled, but you can do this a couple different ways. One thing, you take a Q-tip, and if you take it, you can blend the colors really easy. You get a really nice effect with your pastels. Or if you want, you can just take your finger and go over and blend this. Literally, that's all it took to shore that up, and it's a much nicer look. And then, of course, if you want, do wash your hands when you get done. Probably a good idea actually to put a glove on before you do this. I'm not going to show you do it, but I'm going to go ahead and blend all these, including the text at the top, and then I'll show you the poster when it's done here. Today I'm going to show you how to use OpenSCAD to model this 3D printed tool. It will mount directly in a 1/4 inch collet inside your router. I've done one out of wood before. I now have a simpler spring mechanism. If you haven't installed OpenSCAD, I'm going to show you where to download it, and then you're going to just go through the menu, install it, and then I'm going to go jump in the program as if you're brand new, and I'm going to show you how to model components of the plug for our CNC tool, and then we're going to be good to go. We have it is go into Google and you can just type in OpenSCAD. It's a open source freeware program, and you go to this site, OpenSCAD or SCAD, whichever way you want to say it. Go ahead and execute it. What you can get is an opening screen, something like this. It probably won't have these things because these are things that I've been recently working on. And when you hit new, you're going to get this, and it's going to have an area where we're going to generate our 3D STL models for 3D printing. This is the area we're going to put our script, which is a little program that will run And then here's some error codes and so forth down here at the bottom. I would highly recommend the first thing you do whenever you start one of these projects is you go ahead and save it. Right here I have the 3D printed parts that we modeled in OpenSCAD. I'm going to show you all of that and all the parameters here in a moment, but I kind of wanted to walk you through and orient you to the different parts that we're going to be printing. The first one is this plug number 1. If you've done this in a previous video, this has got added height, so I would recommend, even if you've printed it before, to go ahead and print this one. It allows for more up and down movement inside the central chamber. And so this is plug number 1. It's compatible with plug number 2, 3 different varieties, and plug number 3, 4 different varieties. And so this plug number 2, this, if you've done the previous one, you do not need to reprint this. This is identical to what you've done before. It allows for a big pin to be held, and it's going to be held with plug number 3 here, which has got an open hole that's perfectly sized to fit a big pin. Now, there's 2 other versions of this plug number 2. One of them you will see has a square hole in the bottom, and that square hole is because our pastels, which are Master Touch soft pastels, are square shaped. So we need a square hole so that it can insert through the bottom and protrude so it can draw on our surface. So that has been modeled exclusively for Master Touch pastels. And then this top one is kind of a bonus. I didn't even tell you in this video that I was going to do this, but I also modeled one of these plugs that will perfectly fit a Crayola crayon through the opening on the bottom. So this is sized to that. And then of course we need a central plug that is plug number 3 that slides up and down. You'll see that this has a square opening on the bottom and a little hole through the bottom. The little hole is not to put a bolt or anything through. It's so that once you put the pastel in here, you can poke it out from the bottom if it gets stuck. So it's got a stop so that it keeps it from sliding through, but that's helpful. And then of course this is going to be sized for a Crayola crayon. It also has a stop and a small hole so you can push the Crayola crayon back through if it gets stuck once you put it in here. And then this one is also kind of a bonus that I never told you about. This is sized for a very particular type pastel, which is a pencil type pastel, so you can do fine lines if you want to do it, which is advantageous if you're doing really, really fine writing. So let me show you how this all goes together, and if you haven't ever seen it before, it will be useful. So to make this go together, you're going to need plug number 1, and then we're going to take a 1.5 inch, 1/4 inch bolt, 20 threads per inch, and we're going to go ahead and thread it onto this, putting the round head down into the central hole and twisting, and it should be a tight enough fit that the threads will actually catch. It's not essential that they catch because we're going to clamp it down with some nuts here in a second. But once you get it going, you can just twist away until it goes all the way down. And you'll note that that round head has cross threads, so you can get a hold of it with a screwdriver. And once the nuts are on, you can really tighten it down. The next thing we're going to need to do is we're going to put some nuts on here. Like I said, I would recommend you put a screwdriver in there and really ratchet that down hard. And then if you didn't do a lock nut there, put a second nut on here and that will act like a lock nut. So we're nearly set up. The next thing we're going to need is a spring, because the spring mechanism is the key to make this all work. The easiest way to get a spring is to go buy a notebook that has a coil. This is a spiral notebook. I think it's 80 or 100 pages. At Staples right now with back to school sales, you can get these around 35 cents. There's probably lots of other office supply stores. You can get it probably even cheaper than that. And what you're going to do is you're just going to take this coil out and you're going to snip it with some pincher nose pliers. You want about 6 coils. You want it so that when you put it in here, it slightly protrudes from the top, and make sure that you bend it around so that it doesn't go over the edge here. So then it's time to put this together. If you're going to use the pin tool, what we're going to do is we're going to grab our plug number 2 that's sized for your pin. We're going to grab our pin plug, which I already have one pre-cut, but it looks something like this. And if you've never seen this before, you need a Bic round stick pin. If you take it off, what you can do is you can just twist and you can just snip it with the scissors and it will fit perfectly down the plug. There's a lip. There's a lip on the edge of this Bic plug so it catches, so it's not going to push through. And then we're going to go ahead and put it in here like so. So it fits down in there. Oops. Try that again, like so. I'm going to put it in here, hold it, and you can see it goes up and down. And we put that inside our collet of our router over here, and we're ready to draw. Now, when we want to change it out, we're just going to pop this off. We're going to take this out. We're going to say switch to a pastel. So to pastel, what are we going to do? We're going to get our plug number 3. This has got a pastel pre-installed in it. And we're going to get our plug number 2 with the square hole. We're going to put this through so it lines up like so. Put it on here like so. Make sure it's down tight. And we're ready to go. And we're ready to mount inside our collet of our router. And we can draw. Now I need to give you a heads up warning that some of the pastels that come with Master Touch might be sized slightly off. So this is our plug that we printed, and this particular piece of blue was slightly undersized for a hole. Now we could remodel the plug, but there's a much easier solution, and that is if you take a little piece of paper towel and you put it around the edge like so. You can just put it in here and push tightly. You'll find that it's tight, and then you can of course snap it to the size that you want. So that is a neat trick. And then of course you can tear off the edge of the paper towel, and when you want to get it out, it's going to be very tight. You can push something through the backside and you can change it out. I would recommend you print multiple of these plugs and just have them all set up for all the colors. I have a set of 12 over here, but they come in 18 and I think 48. So you have a really, really broad range of possible colors that you can use with this setup. So that's the pastels. Now, let's say we wanted to do the Crayola crayon. So once again, what you're going to do is you're going to get your plug. You're going to take the paper off your crayon, and you're going to insert the Crayola crayon into your plug number 3. And then we're going to take that inserted crayon and we're going to put it in the proper plug number 2 that fits through. We're going to put it together and we're ready to draw. So that gives you an idea of exactly how we're going to accomplish all this. So you've got all the different colors of Bic pens. I've got 3 laid out, but I think you can buy them in other colors as well. You could have up to 48 Master Touch pastels, which I find are the best contrast. And then you can do Crayola crayons, which I haven't had massive luck, but it depends upon the surface that you're writing upon. Just a hint, when you're writing with these pastels or crayons, you want to use, if you're going to do it on poster board, go ahead and do the choose a poster board that doesn't have a slick surface. So you want the non-shiny surface up. And if you want to have a little more ease, you can use drawing paper. That's what I used here. And it's got a little more tooth on the paper and it grabs the pastel off easier. The other thing you could do is you could coat the surface of whatever you're drawing on with a pure chalk type coating so that it writes with chalk. And that would even probably give you even better results. So I hope that helps, and I'm going to go ahead and hop over to OpenSCAD. I'm not going to go into the detail that I've gone in the previous video. If you want to see all the details and nuances of OpenSCAD, please watch the previous one. I'm going to give you the code. I'm going to give you a very few tips. I'm going to generate the STL. I'm going to take it over to a slicer software, show you how to slice it. And then lastly, I'm going to show you exactly how to set up your tool paths so that you can be successful and follow that up with the tips that at the very end of the video, which are really essential if you want to optimize your results. So make sure you stay to the very, very end, and you're going to find some things that are going to save you a lot of headaches. So I've loaded up all the code needed for generating the models that we're going to 3D print that we're going to use with our CNC to draw with either a Bic pen, a pastel, or a crayon. And so here's all the code. I'm not going to go into the detail that I have in a previous video. If you want to know all the nuances and how all this code works in OpenSCAD, then please make sure you check out my other video that goes into much greater detail. This is an updated version because I have taken this plug 1, for example, and I've increased its height and I've optimized its parameters to make it compatible with all of these. So if you've typed in before, I would recommend, if you're going to go ahead and convert over and want to try the pastel, you really need to redo this plug number 1. The plug 2 and 3 for the Bic is really the same as what you may have generated in another video. If you already made it, you wouldn't need to reprint these. So here's all the code. I'm not going to go into all the detail, but I will make a few brief comments. One, when you see double forward slash and you see lines in green, then know that it's commenting that out. It's not really doing anything in the software. If you typed all this code in, you wouldn't see anything appear over here until you hit this button at the top next to the STL button, or hit the F6 on your keyboard, and that's render. This has already been rendered, but if this goes through this code, compiles it, and then draws the 3D models over here in STL files. The other thing that you want to be aware of, I did change a few of these parameters in here compared to the first video that I did, and of course I obviously had to put in some information about the pastels. So the pastels and the crayon, you certainly won't want to add those parameters in there. Technically, when you're retyping this code to make this, anything that's in green is not really getting compiled. So if you want to save a little typing, you could do so and leave those commented lines out. When you do type them, I would recommend you type them because it'll help you later on keep organized. But if you're typing a long line like this, make sure at the end of the line you don't hit the enter or return key. You just keep typing and let the line carry over until the very end, then hit your return. If you came out here to, for example, this change and hit return, what you'd find is this next line would not be commented and you get an error. So you don't want that to happen. So just word of warning there. Let's say you wanted to comment out a whole bunch of code, because instead of generating this whole plate of items, maybe you just wanted to generate, this plug right here for a 3D printable plug for your pastel, plug number 3. To do something like that, we could of course go through and we could put double lines through all of these different areas in our code that correspond to this. You would never want to mess with these parameters at the top. You need to keep those in because we're going to use that data that's assigned to them throughout the code. But when you get down here where you're actually generating the models, for example, this plug number 1 is generated in this section from right here to right here. So that's plug number 1. If I wanted to take all those lines of code out, I can do that in a different way than a double forward slash. I can do this. If I want to take out a section of code, I can go a forward slash and a star. And you note everything below that suddenly lit up green because now it's all commented out, and it will not stop commenting until I do another star forward slash. Now note I reversed the order. This was forward slash star, then I have to go star forward slash, and everything in between got blank. Now you say, well, nothing changed over here. Nothing changed because we didn't update this display. But if I go over here and I go next to the STL and I either hit F6 on my keyboard or click on this, watch what happens. Take a few seconds. Generate. Plug number 1 is now no longer being drawn. And so you can block out areas of code very, very quickly using that trick. So something to keep in mind. I'm going to remove that for the moment. And just have that. So I'm not going to read through all this code, but I'm going to put it up here. And what I would suggest you do is do a screen print of each of these pages. So including the comment lines, Looks like you've got 93 lines of code. Potentially, if you type all the comments, it's probably 25 of those lines at least are probably comments. But I would just do a screen print and then just type it in from the screen print if you're going to make this model. So here's the first section of the code, which is really the parameters. All of these are being generated in millimeters. You're never going to want to comment this section of the code out. We need to keep those in because the code below in different spots is going to rely upon the values that we assign to those variables. The next section, we have plug number 1, which we already said was this one. It's taller than my previous video. Plug number 2 is this one. Plug number 3 is going to be this one. Then we have a plug 2 for soft pastels. And so that is this section of the code right here, corresponds to this section of the code right here. The plug 3 for the pastels is going to correspond to this one right here. And if I rotate it, you can see that it's got a bottom in it and a hole through the bottom as well. And then we got plug 2 for the crayon, which is up here. And then we've got plug 3 for the Crayola, which is going to be this one right here. And then we got a plug 3 for the pencil type pastel Curate brand, which is going to be this one right here. And so you have all the lines of code for this whole thing. And when you get done typing, make sure once again that you do hit this 6. You should get all the things. It's a little strange at first getting used to how the mouse structure works, but if you hold down the right mouse button, you can pan up and down, left and right. If you hold the left mouse button down and move your mouse, you can rotate around. If you hold both of them, you can rotate left and right. So, and then if you have a center scroll wheel, you can scroll in and out with the center scroll wheel. So hopefully that helps you if you want to kind of see what's being generated in your models. That can be a useful thing for you. So I'm just going to rotate this so you can kind of see what's going on here. So this is plug 1, universal. It'll be used compatible with all of these plug 2s and compatible with all these plug 3s. This section right here is going to be for your big pen. This, and this is going to be for your Master Touch pastel. That's a square block. This, and this is going to be for Crayola crayon drawing. And this, and that one is going to be the pencil type pastel. So go ahead and type that code in, and when you get all done, you've generated this code. Then you still need to come over here and export the STL. So you'll click on this STL button, or you can hit the F7 on your keyboard. So if I do that, we can come over here and you can see that I have a name already assigned to it. I'll just save it. I'm in Prusa Slicer now. You can use whatever slicer you want. You need to import the STL file we just saved. Wherever you saved it, you want to make sure you don't use imperial units. That would be inches and feet. We want to use metric. So we want this first one. And we pull this in. We get our file. And we're going to go ahead and slice it. You can see my settings up here that I used. So 0.20 millimeter normal, generic PLA, 15% infill. I didn't use any brim or support structures. And you get your file. Looks like it takes a little under 3 hours to print all of these, but there's a lot of components there. And then you just need to export it. So you click the export button down here on the bottom right hand side and save it to your SD card or your flash drive, or send it directly to your printer, however your 3D printer, however you've got that and then of course print it, and then you're ready to go. That pretty well wraps this up. Now, before I give you the final tips that are really essential to make this tool work in an optimal way, if you could do me a favor, if you've seen new things in this video that you haven't seen elsewhere on YouTube, you found value in all that I've provided for you, if you could please hit like, and if you have not yet subscribed, go ahead and hit that thumbs up button once, so it's a like, and then go ahead and if you have not yet subscribed, please subscribe right now. I would really, really appreciate that. It helps me out a whole lot. And so let's talk about some things that are going to make this work optimally when you go and try to use this on your CNC. I'm in VCarve right now, and this is going to be tip number one. When you're doing your pin tool path using a big pin, then what you need to do is you need to select whatever vectors you want to draw, and then you go to tool paths, and you're going to do a profile line on path, and then you have your tool that you select. So I'm just going to show you mine. I usually do a depth of pass of about 3 millimeters, so it's about a tenth of an inch if you're used to inches. And then this is how I set my tool up. And so I've actually got my tool set up as if it was a ball nose. And so for the pen or pencil, I have a diameter that I use of about 1 millimeter. And pass depth, I use 2 millimeters, but you could definitely use 3 or 4. It doesn't really matter. But it's very important whenever you're using any of these tools that you turn the router off. You can't put in a 0 speed, but you can put in a 1. But have your router turned off or your spindle completely turned off whenever you use these, and still use eye protection and follow the normal safety rules for your particular device. And so I would go ahead and I would just select this tool if I was going to generate this, and then go down here and just calculate it, and it would create my pin tool path. So it's basically a line on profile. Now let's say we wanted to do something a little more sophisticated, like what we did with the pastels. So I'm going to go ahead and click down here. I'm going to turn this tool path off. We're going to go over here to the 2D view, and I'm going to select all of these. Actually, I'm going to select this, and let's say I wanted to fill this in, and maybe this face of this cube and this face. And so I wanted all these in the same color. So on something like this, I would go over to tool paths, and I'm going to pin this so it doesn't fly away on me. And instead of using a line on, we're going to go ahead and do a pocket tool path. And so I'm going to do a pocket tool path, and you're going to see that I've got a different tool set up. I do a 3 millimeter depth pass, but let me show you the parameters that I use. This would be for the Master Touch pastels. So if I look at this tool, you can see that I have the diameter of that chalk set for about 5 millimeters, and my step over I have at 3 millimeters, which is a 60%. So it will overlap this when it comes around and makes a second pass, and that seems to have to work really, really well with those pastels, so you don't have a bunch of gaps left in your thing. So I could just select this like so, and now I'm going to go ahead and just generate this. You can see this all play out. So I'll calculate, and what you can see, anywhere that it's got room, it's going to go ahead and fill in those gaps. So even on those lettering, you're going to see that it did make those traces where there was extra space in the letters, and here it made a path as well. So that's tip number one. Tip number two is make sure that you always re-zero your pastel tool whenever you do a tool exchange, or your pin whenever you do a tool exchange. Go ahead and bring the Z, and I always like to have it slightly depressed. There's quite a bit of give because I've got a lot of motion capability inside of the plug. So go ahead and not only just put it flush with the surface, but I would recommend you put it so that it slightly compresses the spring, and it should still have plenty of room if with your Z clearance, if you don't go too crazy, and that will get you some better results. So that's tip number two. Tip number three, don't make the length of your pastel too long where you might snap it off. It's much more forgiving than chalk, but what I showed in the video was kind of the optimal length. Tip number four, what you're drawing on, it definitely matters. So if you're drawing a poster board, have the non-glossy side face up. You're going to get better results. You can draw on black poster board like the first video I did, or you can draw on white poster board, or you can draw on drawing paper like I did in this one, and you can get different results. Lots of choices there. And I think those are the main things. If you like this video, I think you're going to find that you might really like this one. So please go ahead and check this out, and I think you're going to enjoy.